So recently I watched Brotherhood of the Wolf. I watched this because Chandler originally had it down as one of the options we were going to put into the 31 on 31 that we've got coming up. But due to certain kind of restrictions that we had for that 31 on 31, we kind of decided it couldn't really go in. But anyway, I watched it before we decided it couldn't go in, so I'll give you my thoughts on it. I went into this having seen it way back when and not liking it all that much way back when, mostly because it came out and all the reviews were like really great and stuff. It was getting like 4 and 5 star reviews, and I was like, oh, I've got to check this film out. And I didn't take to it all that much, so I never kind of went back to it until now. It's a lot better than I remember it being. It's got to be said. I didn't remember quite as much action in this film as what there is. There's quite a lot, as it happens. A lot of martial arts as well, which was quite surprising. I forgot that as well completely. I just remember a beast. This is a film about a beast that is attacking the French countryside in the 1700s. And a load of men are kind of dispatched to hunt it down and kill it. As it happens, the beast within this story is based on a true story. Yes, believe it or not. So there's an actual historical recording of this supposed beast that killed 100 and odd people or something over a span of a few years. Some guy killed a wolf and then the killing stopped. So it was put down to that. But either way, it kind of created a lot of superstitions around the region that kind of still persist today, apparently. Although this was the first I'd ever heard of it. You've got a bunch of hunters that kind of go about their business. 2 in particular. One of them is played by Samuel Le Bihan, if I'm pronouncing that right, which I'm probably not, and Mark Dacascos, who some may know from John Wick Chapter 3, Crying Freeman, another film directed by Christopher Gans. But yeah, they're an unlikely pair. One is like a Native American Indian who's kind of been befriended by this French guy who's a bit of a playboy, kind of passed it about a bit with the women. He's a bit of a ladies' man, but he's also very loyal to this Native American man who just happens to be a badass martial artist. So yeah, amongst all the political stuff that goes on with other people, the other groups that are after this beast, that martial arts comes into play quite a bit. So it is one of those films that's a bit of a mashup where you've got a lot of stuff kind of in it, a lot of influences that you don't really expect to mesh together. And you either go along with it or you don't. And I think the first time that I saw this, I was probably like about 20 years old, 21. I didn't quite go along with it. I felt like it didn't quite mesh. But my sensibilities have changed somewhat. I'm able to embrace certain things that perhaps I wasn't back then. And this time around, I just had fun with it. Now, not everything in it works. There is a romance with Bihan's character, and it's just completely stale. So we're supposed to buy that he falls in love with this woman and she falls in love with him, and it's just that typical kind of let's throw a romance in there because we need something for the ladies, and it just doesn't work. This is a story about a bunch of guys going on a hunt for a beast and lots of violence kind of ensuing, and it should have just stuck to that really. And this kind of forced romance, and when I say forced, I mean it just didn't need to be in there. They've forced it in, wedged it in because some producer somewhere has said, I feel like we need a romance angle, and it doesn't need it. It shouldn't have had it, and the film does run a little bit too long as a result of having it. But yeah, it's there. It's kind of the Hollywood trope, but it doesn't do anything for me. Everything else is pretty effective. Some really good action sequences, some very tense sequences. I think the CGI on the beast has really not dated very well at all. There's some really dodgy looking CGI in it, that kind of early noughties CGI where perhaps they were punching a little bit above the weight. even so, everything else that's going on, the pacing, the action sequences, except when the love interest stuff comes in. Monica Bellucci's pretty interesting. She makes for an interesting character. She, as it happens, isn't the love interest. She's kind of something else that's going on that I won't go too much into because it might spoil certain elements of the film. But yeah, she's an interesting character, probably the most interesting in the film. And Vincent Cassel is... I'm not sure it's much of a spoiler to call him a villain, because I think at this point he's kind of expected to be. Vincent Cassel does, yeah, whenever he pops up in a film, he always just seems to be, at the very least, some smarmy git that you kind of want to slap. But yeah, he plays an effective villain, although he's not the only villain in the film. And who is ultimately the primary villain, I will leave for you to find out and watch. But either way, there's a lot of stuff going on, and for the most part, it's pretty well handled. It's quite visually interesting. Gans does some bizarre editing choices at times, but it kind of works because, as I say, he's throwing everything in there, including the kitchen sink, so to speak. Yeah, I go along for the ride. I enjoyed it, really liked it. I wouldn't say it was a classic, but I certainly think it's got a lot more redeeming features than I remembered it having. So yeah, Brotherhood of the Wolf, check it out if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, I want to know what you thought about it. Do leave your comments on the film down below. Thank you for watching this video. Until next time, cracking.